Dear scholars, we have been learning a lesson, The Fall of Troy. Through the previous some of the videos, we finished learning first part of the story, through which we came to know about the great Indian as well as Western epics in short. Then we came to know about the cause of war between the Trojans and the Greeks. We came to know that how the Greeks laid siege around the city of Troy. There were everyday fights. There were fights every day between the armies or the great heroes of both these cities or kingdoms. Some of the great heroes were killed in this war. So, till this, we came to know about the war was on and on. Many of the people from both sides were killed. They were tired of the everyday war, everyday fights, but still the war was on and on. Let us see what happened in the further story or further part. So let us begin learning second part of the lesson, The Fall of Troy. Here in these two paragraphs there is mentioned sorry here in these two paragraphs it is mentioned that how Odysseus planned to defeat Trojans, or what was his plan. Let us see. At last Troy was taken, not by force but by a trick. It was the cunning Odysseus who, who thought of a plan to obtain the victory. So, through the previous part, we came to know that there was no kingdom or city who was ready to get defeated, and so the war was on and on. But here, at last, Troy was taken, Troy got defeated by the Greeks. How? That is by a trick of cunning Odysseus. He had a cunning plan, and so Greeks won this battle. Let us see what was that plan. Let us build a great wooden horse, he said, big enough to hold men inside it, and let some of our best fighters hide in the horse. Then let us burn our tents and pretend to sail away in our ships. But instead of sailing away, we will return in night when the Trojans are asleep. We will attack the city and burn and kill. So it was the cunning plan of that Odysseus. So accordingly, they thought to build a wooden horse to hide some of their men or soldiers inside it, then burning their tents and pretend to sail away in their ships, and decided to return in night, and at last when Trojans are asleep they would attack the city and burn and kill. So it was the cunning plan of Odysseus. So after telling this cunning plan, they thought, or they planned who would go or who would hide inside that wooden horse, or which soldier from their side would hide in that horse and will enter the city by the mean of that horse. Let us see. It is given in the next paragraph. The Greek leaders decided to follow the advice of wise Odysseus. So, a great horse of wood was made by a skillful engineer, and the greatest heroes, who were they? Menelaus, Odysseus himself and others entered it, the last man to go in being the architect himself. Why architect? Because he knew the secret of opening and shutting the entrance. That evening, the Greeks burned their tents and sailed away in their ships. But they did not go very far. Only one man was left behind to persuade Trojans to drag the horse into their city. So as per Odysseus' plan, they started implementing it. So horse was built, and Menelaus, Odysseus, some others, and the architect, they all hid in that wooden horse. Then other Greeks burn their tents as per the plan, and they sail away in their ships. Only one Greek soldier or one Greek was left behind. For what? To persuade the Trojans, to convince the Trojans to drag the horse into their city. Let us see what happened further. Here in this paragraph, there is mentioned the reason for Troy to rejoice and celebrate, to enjoy, to show their happiness for their celebration. Let us see what is the reason for their rejoice and celebration. Next day, the Trojans woke up expecting to go out and fight as they had done for the past 10 years. What delight and surprise they felt at the sight they saw on the seashore outside the walls. It seemed that the long siege was over at last. The tents had been burned, the shore was deserted, the Greek ship had all gone. So, as the siege was lasting for 10 years, when they woke up and saw the siege was nowhere to be seen, then the tents of the Greeks were burned, and the Greek ships they had also gone. So in this way, they saw the shore was deserted, stranded, or no man was there to be seen. Seeing that, they thought the siege was over, and they decided to celebrate their victory. Let us see what happened further. It's peace at last, they cried, and opened wide their gates, and came out in large numbers on their plain, glad to be free again to go where they pleased. Then they saw on the sands the huge wooden horse. They gathered round it in astonishment, for it was indeed a wonderful piece of work. So it is that they are showing their happiness. They were enjoying, they were crying for the peace, and they opened their gates and came out in large numbers on the plain. They were glad and free to go anywhere, to go where they want. At last they saw on the sand the huge wooden horse. When they gathered around it, they were astonished, they were surprised. Why? Because it was a wonderful piece of work. In the next paragraph, it is mentioned that the Trojans, how Trojans thought of to drag the horse inside, or how the Greek convinced the Trojans to drag the horse in. Let us see his. Let us see how he convinced the Trojans. As they were wondering how the horse had been built and why it had been left behind, they found a Greek with his hands tied together, lying under it. When the Trojans dragged him out, the man pretended to be very frightened of them. When he was commanded to tell them why the Greeks had gone and why they had left this horse behind, he pretended to tremble very much and refused to speak. When at last they threatened to kill him, he spoke and told them this false tale. So it was according to Odysseus' plan only. The Greek man or the Greek person was just pretending that he was afraid of the Trojans and his hands were tied off by the Greeks only, and the horse was left behind by them only. He was not ready to tell. He pretended that he was not ready to tell the truth, but at last he told them the false tale. What is that false tale? That is given in this paragraph, or how that cunning Greek explained the presence of such a large wooden horse that is given. Let us see. The Greeks are tired of long war and have sailed away in their ships, he said. But they are afraid of the long voyage home too, and so they have made this horse and left it as an offering to the god of the sea. They wanted also to kill me and offer me as a sacrifice to the sea god, but I escaped and hid from them. So, as per this false tales, what is given? The Greeks just sailed away in their ships. That Greek person as well as that wooden horse was left as an offering to the god of sea so that the Greeks could safely reach their city. Let us see the next paragraph, in which it is mentioned how the Trojans dragged the horse into their city, or what they did after listening the false tale told by that Greek person. But why did the Greeks make such a huge horse? Some of the Trojans asked. The cunning Greek made this reply: if they had made a smaller offering, you might have taken it into your city. Then the luck would have gone to the Trojans and not to the Greeks. That is why they made it too big to go inside your gates. So it was the plan so that they could break their walls. The Trojans could break their walls to drag that horse inside. So, as per this cunning plan, the Greek person convinced the Trojans, and listening this, the Trojans were happy and they decided to drag the horse in. Let us see. The Trojans were delighted to hear this. The Greeks have gone, they said, and the walls are no longer necessary. Let us make a hole in the wall and drag the horse in. So it was their happiness, and they thought, as as the Greeks had gone, there is no need of protective walls. So they decided to make a hole in the wall and drag the horse in, as the horse was too big. Last paragraph we are going to discuss through this video. It is, their wise priest warned them not to do so. It may be a trick that will ruin us, he said. You will bring disaster on the city if you break down the walls. But they were so excited that they paid no attention to his words. They broke down part of their strong wall in order to drag the horse in. So, though it was worn by priest not to drag the horse in, it may be a trick of Greeks. It would ruin, it would destruct the city. The Trojans, who were very excited and happy, they didn't pay attention to the words of that priest, and they broke down the walls and dragged the horse in their city. What happened in the further part, we will see through the next video.